Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Andrés Rengifo y
Very
soy
good morning
calense.
to you all. My name is Andre Rengifo. I'm from Cali. I'm a professor at the University of Rogers. I welcome to the more than 1,100 people that you registered to Zoom through Facebook. I salute you on the name of the organizing committee of this event that is formed by the students and professors of 23 universities in Colombia and in the United States, public and private universities in the region and out of the center. So we work in teaching, research from social sciences, humanities, law, and natural sciences. For us, this historic moment that the country has joined us to the idea to contribute to space from the academia or the academic world, where we join the voices that look for a more fair country, more prosperous country, and peaceful country. We don't want to amplify our voices. We want to amplify those voices that get from the countryside, from the city, that are somewhat fragmented and that have been turned off by force. We acknowledge the situation right now is critical and that many Colombians are suffering right now. The, and the most important part because we have been victim of the violence in the region, also because of the economic crisis, the blockings, the pandemic, and all the indifference that happens in the country. We are aware that not everything is new. Today is the day of African Colombian culture. We commemorate the slavery in Colombia in 1851. That's when we got even first went over there and here. The gap between Thank you for your courage in the streets, the people that are protesting, and your peaceful demonstrations. It's an inspiration to all of us. Thank you to all of you um, who are not on strike and that are sitting down to negotiate. Among our participants, there are people that have been threatened, people that are hurting. The mobilization one of our people who were moving was attacked by gunshots. Some people have their some people have their family members in hospitals due to COVID, and sometimes many of their family members are dying. Others are looking for their friends who have disappeared. Other people want to reopen their businesses, but um,
Y el corazón para salir de esta crisis con respeto y con dignidad.
we are trying to sponsor the people that want to get a better life with dignity. I would like to thank the organizing committee that is um, here in these days, and this the side of the pond, and people from the University of Yale in Chicago, Lorena Avila from Rogers, Lina Marmolejo from George Mason, and Ana Maria Arjona from Northwestern University. On the other side of the pond, thank you to Enrique Jaramillo in ICESI in Cali, María Alejandra Vélez in Universidad de los Andes, and Carlos Lozano in Javeriana University, and all other members that for the 23 universities that are driving this event. To you, the audience, for giving us your time in this crucial moment. Thank you. Thank you for being here with us. This doesn't end today, guys. Today, we're just going and started with dialogue space. We're going to hear about the voices that are not shown in the press, the voices that are not shown in TV, the voices that don't have any type of sponsorship. This is your turn to speak up. For us, it's a time to listen. Then we will be looking for more voices, more people, more conversations between the civil society and the state. And just as this doesn't end today, it doesn't start today either. We have to acknowledge the importance of the work of the spaces that I aim to open new spaces and new opportunities. From our small group, we are ready to support and make these efforts visible from this meeting and other events that we want to organize in the upcoming days. For now, let's take notes. There's no quizzes, but ask any questions you have. And guys, we're here for you, and thank you very much. Now we're going to go ahead and get started with our first panel that we have called Testimonies. So now we're going to give a floor to the first panel called Testimonials. Very good morning to you all. Welcome to this first panel. My name is Lorena Avila. I'm a student at Rutgers University here in the United States. And for me, it's a pleasure to present this panel. I'm here with Lilibeth Villamizar and Alex Galvis from the organization, The Right to Not Move in the city of Cucuta. We are here with Esteban Piedrahita, president of the Chamber of Commerce in Cali, and also from Cali, David Gomez, founder of the popular Siloe Museum. We are here in Mrs. Jacqueline Castillo of the False Positive Mothers in the city of Bogota. Guys, I want to remind you that the lower part of the Zoom, you can access your English or Spanish channels and the interpretation feature, and also there's closed caption available at any time. Regarding the panel, very simple rule, guys. This is a panel about testimonials, and this is why this is going to be a closed panel in one Colombia and the world to listen to our panel members. We have recommended to them, and my work here, Little Tragic, is going to be to remind them when their time is going to be about to be over. It's 10 minutes per organization. I would we would like to thank you for your presence here today. And to start, Lilibeth and David, you guys have the floor. Lilibeth. Hello, very good morning to you all. Good morning to you all. My name is Lilibeth Villamizar. I'm architect from the Francisco de Pablo Santander. And for 4 years, I've been part of 4 years of space of citizen participation as Green City and Lunes de Ciudad. And my first job was to be local coordinator of the platform, the right to not obey or not to obey. All right. So I'm here with Feliz Mario Galvez. I will give the floor to him in a minute. I would like to thank you from the Cocota Northern Santander recap to be here in Northeast Colombia, representing the voice of many colleagues. And Lorena, I open the space for Melix so he can introduce himself as well. Hello, good morning. My name is Felix Mario Galvis Uribe. I'm a philosopher with specialized in public policy in the University of the Andes. I'm from Cucuta. I got as soon as I got to Cucuta, I became part of the Right to Not Obey organization. Ever since I was very young, I've always have liked social projects, and I have been able to work with youth movements here in our city.
Bueno, mi nombre es David Gómez.
My name is David Gomez. I was born in Siloé, here in Cali, Colombia. And we try to improve our territory. We're participating actively in this, what we call the national strike or paro nacional, which is going 24 days today. Thank you, David. Right now, we would like to hear from Lilibeth and Felix so they can talk to us a little bit about their feelings and how they see their situation looking at the future. Up next, we will hear David with the same interpretation. Okay, Lorena. Well, okay, about feelings. Well, I was talking to a lot of partners. This days of emotional roller coaster for us as youth or young people, and for me as a citizen, and even as an activist, as a feminist, and now almost becoming a human rights advocate. Well, it's been quite challenging, to be honest, in the sense that, well, we didn't mention before that the mental health of all Colombians is being affected. and so many emotions that we've been living through. Well, we've been loading them for more. I was telling Felix, how many days of strike do we have now? But it's almost interesting because these exercises also of resilience and resistance from other ways of exercising the right to protest. Well, this has been civic experience that if you don't live them, you cannot dimension them. So punctually, I feel that I live in a motion roller coaster 24/7 because I have to be dealing not only with my personal issues but also with my community issues. Um, I mean, country issues, right? Because obviously, everything that's unfair makes me sick. And even though we've tried to take things in a different way from a non-violent point of view, we understand that the unfair reality of other cities in the country, well, is different. I feel like that. I don't know. My coworker Felix, my partner Felix, I don't know how he feels, but it's just to channel and be a catalyzer that all these emotions at some point in time, the being and then being feeling outraged takes us to be hopeful. We as young people were trying to take that other part, right? Yeah, let's be outraged, but let's kind of channel it through love. I don't know, Felix, if you want to say something.
Sí, claro.
Sure, sure.
Yo creo que hay
Well,
una,
I think there's a
¿no?
double
Primero es que
attitude in this regard.
de alguna manera
First,
esto no haya estallado antes. Pues venían muchas malas
um,
noticias desde antes
actually,
parte
I
del
was
gobierno,
surprised that this
pero
thing
de
didn't
pronto el
burst
tiempo
before because the government was making many
cuando
decisions.
estalló. Yo creo que pues para mucha gente ha sido
And for many people, it has been something completely unexpected.
y que veamos
And
continuar trabajando en torno
we
a eso.
want to keep continuing in this regard. And I believe that the people that have been the most surprised are the national government. I believe the national government abused its people with the horrible decisions they made that attempted against the will of the people in the midst of the pandemic. They were making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And people thought that the government thought that people was going to be afraid because of the pandemic.
Que dice no, que no,
And with
no
people
más.
that resist, said no.
Que quede aproximadamente
Um,
para Iván Duque,
the fact that Ivan Duque has one more year of system, we're demanding some structural changes in our society,
en torno a eso.
and we're
Entonces creo que eso es algo
paying close attention to that. So that's a double attitude. Of course, it's weird that it didn't happen
han
before.
sido muy malas decisiones, pero la fuerza ha sido algo de
But the
verdad
force,
inspirador y como lo dice mi compañera Lilibet, bastante.
and as my coworker Elizabeth, it's been quite challenging.
David, quisiéramos escuchar un poco tu perspectiva.
David, we would like to hear from your perspective.
Que mencionábamos hace un momento, sentir y sensaciones frente a lo que viene sucediendo.
And
Bueno,
your
antes-
perspective on what's happening.
De los sentires de los jóvenes, que son los que esto están
Well,
con-
we are trying to be to sympathize with youth people, but it wasn't on 28th of April. It was on 21st of November in 2019. That's when it all started with that huge mobilization.
Vamos a hacer un panedito de cómo
And
nosotros
I'm going to try to show you how we keep our memory, and then I'm going to talk. So after the death of Dylan Cruz in Bogota, some young organizations of the National University in the 4th of December invented the famous first line. The first line
contención para
was a
proteger.
contentious phase of governments. And the first line was about contention. It's a first line of protection. And well, we are completing 24 days of national strike.
¿Qué significa la primera línea para que la gente que nos está viendo entienda realmente la
And what is the first line? We are the first line, the front line. We are here to protect you, Colombians. We don't have flags, we don't have leaders, we don't have spokesmen, we don't have colors. We don't have a face. That's what the first line is. And starting there, well, the young people have taken the baton to tell the people that we are here in the Colombians are fed up with so much abuse. 80 billion pesos every year.
Y las marchas realmente son la población, es la
And
clase
the
media.
strikes are the population, is the middle class that we're going to lose their status.
Pero hay que recuperarlo precisamente por eso es el paro. Pero también hay voces desde la gente muy crítica de que tratan de estigmatizar la protesta, estigmatizar
People are trying to stigmatize the protest, stigmatize the points of concentration, saying that people are rebels, that are paramilitary, that are mobsters, and that's not true. And thanks to technology and thanks to what we're doing right now, we can see in the world the other face, the face of the people, and only the face of the media, the mass media, that are only the ones that are really in favor of the government. And obviously what we want to do is for the good Iván Duque government to re-guide his management of country so that we all can win. We don't want to make them miserable. Like, what if Iván Duque loses his position? We're not gonna win anything because the real problem of the country is the context, is how the country has been managed for many years, even from the colonial years. And here in Cali, something preposterous happened, something terrible, outrageous. For the strikes of 28th of April, the mayor of Cali was really worried about COVID and was saying, we are going to die from COVID. And people started feeding fear in the people. He made a horrible mistake. He called a national government so they will have a security council here in the city. Obviously, the government uh, the government paid attention to him. They got here, and the Mr. Zapatero, which is the commander of the Colombian army, took office. So that's why we call it the Operation Zapatero. And with the guilds, we started, and they get together with the guilds, and they tell them, in 24 hours, I will clean the Valle del Cauca, or
el poder económico de la región. Y obviamente hoy ya
and
llevamos
obviously today we have been for 24 days,
y el señor Zapatero no ha podido hacer absolutamente
and Mr.
nada.
Zapatero couldn't do anything because each day the outrage grows more and more. Last Sunday, there was a huge mobilization here in Cali, Bogota, and Medellin. Now,
La percepción de nosotros
our fight as citizens who are here in the midst of the fight,
que no está, que no está de acuerdo.
and we hope the people that are not fighting with the strike,
Esto es una locura. Y obviamente la gente tiene mucho miedo. También
and
de
people are afraid.
que nos vaya a abrazar el anarquismo. Pero hoy hay que respaldar a esos
And
jóvenes
here,
que nos dicen
we want to back up those young people that you did a lot of, we didn't do anything. That's not that true. We have done good things. The thing is that today there's a collective emancipation. And today I would like to tell you from the perspective here, so we can finish this session.
en Siloé se estaba
In
haciendo una-
Siloé, we were doing a velatón, which is a candle protest at night. And we were paying homage to Nicolas as a young artist that were murdered by SMAT, which is the Southern Cali, it's called Sobre Comercio. And in that candle party, and at 9:05 p.m., the helicopters started going by, drones started going by, and 5 minutes later, 9:10, they started firing weapons at us, and they killed 4 other young people. But they didn't kill anyone from the first line. Ironically, this was just normal people, and this was a way of scaring people. And with Siloe, who has that stigmatization that the violent zone of the country, of the city, and the community has been built from its base, from unions and from peasants. So when they killed those people with that massacre, they thought that people in the other cities of the country were going to calm down and we're going to fall back and we was going to go home, and that did not happen. The thing is that today are willing today to die for a better country.
Muchas gracias, David. Precisamente y pues
And
queriendo dar
precisely,
un aspecto más amplio
to give a broader perspective, we are here with Esteban Piedrahita, President of Chamber of Commerce of Cali.
Esteban, bienvenido y
Esteban,
quisiera
welcome.
que nos cuentes un poquito
Why don't you tell us a little bit about
sensaciones,
your
perspectivas
feelings, your
referentes
perspectives
a lo que
regarding
estamos
what
viviendo
we have
en
been
estos días de
discussing
manifestaciones
and these demonstrations and strikes, and etc., and your position about it.
Claro. Hola. Mi video
Um,
está, no lo puedo.
my video.
¿Ustedes me oyen?
Can you guys hear me?
Sí, muy
Me
claro.
dice que el anfitrión tiene
It
inhabilitado.
says that the host has disabled
Ya está.
my microphone.
Ahora sí,
Ya,
listo.
perfecto.
Bueno,
Gracias.
muy buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias.
Very good morning to you all. Thank you for your invitation. It's great to have this space with students here in Colombia and and overseas. Well,
En Colombia yo decía en una columna reciente 21
I said
millones
in a recent column there's 21 million people to protest. That was the number of people that were in poverty last year in Colombia. We are one of the most unequal countries in the world, one of the most violent countries in the world. We have a lot of corruption, not 80 billion. We have racism, exclusion. It's a society that is quite hierarchical, quite racist as well. A lot of problems, to be honest, that are proper Latin America and a country like this one. At the same time, Colombia is a country that has made huge progress. 100 years ago, Colombia was a huge poor country. Argentina was one of the richest countries in the world. Now we're better than Argentina. 50 years ago, Venezuela was the richest country in the region. It was a democracy in Latin America.
en esa época
In a continent that back then that was plagued by dictatorships, and now Venezuela has 80% of their people in poverty and with a lot of poverty. That period, Colombia had reduced this gap, the child death rates that was affecting one each 10 kids. Now it affects 1 out of 100 kids. At least 3% of the population were going to go to college, to 50% to go to college. For the university that had a lettuce, and then for a broad range in Colombians. Not everyone, but we have wide coverage. We have a health system that covers our Colombians imperfectly, in an imperfect way, but much better than many of our neighbors. So this is a country with a lot of difficulties, a country that is a teenage country, is a country that has a terrible democracy. Um, a country that has been really violent by reduced their homicide rate, but in a year at the beginning of 1990s to 20 at every 100,000 inhabitants lives in the last year. So, of course, it depends from where you're standing.
pues uno puede ver
Society. Well, you can see the glass very empty.
hay muchas razones para manifestarse y después de un año donde estuvimos encerrados, nos empobrecimos
And where
psicológicamente.
the year that we were locked down, under lockdown, many people lost their jobs. Young people could not socialize, do what they do, to go to college, university, in during the digital way, education, to see their family becoming poorer and poorer. Of course, there are reasons that justify the protest. Cali, in particular, is a city very particular. The Valle is the third city on Colombia with reduct of prosperity in one of the poorest regions and more abandoned regions in Colombia. Cali was the city in 2018 with the second less level of poverty in Colombia. Valle del Cauca, which is the state, had a similar situation. That poverty increased in 2020. We were reducing poverty this year. Last year, in part because Cali is a city that is completely connected with with the world, so the virus got here really quick, and that went over the Colombian average, the death rate, especially in women, because schools were closed and women had to stop working to take care of their kids, and it was a huge increase in poverty. Cali was one of the cities where there was a huge increase in poverty, not extreme poverty, but misery where people don't have to eat. Well, it's higher in, for example, in the coast, in the Caribbean coast. But this was a really difficult year, and we are the most violent region in Colombia, both Cali and Valle del Cauca. We have a lot of illegal crops, illegal mining.
de tráfico de cocaína.
We have guns and drugs trafficking routes, a huge indigenous population. We have an African population as well in the Pacific with a lot of demands that are completely valid, and a lot of young people that don't have enough opportunities, employment, and that they don't have a promising future. What we have today is a mixture of everything, a popular demonstration, but we have to say there has been, in one way or another, some there are some criminal events. There's strong vandalism. There has been abuse of the police. There have been also attacks with weapons to police stations, etc. Some vandals have destroyed our mass transportation system. There have been some. They have destroyed banks, entities everywhere. So all of this is a cocktail for a closed economy. We did a survey in our 1,000 companies, 1,000 SMEs, and 1 week after the strikes, most of them, 40% of them were closed, and some of them were operating at 40%. We had 70% of the production closed, and 26% of companies were saying that they were reducing their plans. Yesterday, we did a quick survey among 40,000 companies were reducing their staff. Why? Because the ones that could take under a pandemic that was really hard and keep employment, well, now they're forced to close and fire people. So all these farms that provide Colombia with sugar, the Buenaventura port, which is the most important port of Colombia, all the factories, the parts, food in Cali, and Valle, and Buenaventura, we are the greatest supplier in Colombia of food, medications, and personal, per, and well, um, companies and packagers are first need articles for people that affects um, people, and we have less employment opportunities and less capability to shortages. There's a lot of problems going on one side or the other. What is our proposal? Let's demonstrate, let's talk. Of course, there are many things that Colombia needs to change right now, but if we block and we suffocate a productive tissue on which million people dependent, we are going to go under. So yes to the dialogue, yes to the peaceful demonstration, no to abuse of force by the army and the police. It's been the police, and they have committed a lot of crimes, and they have murdered people, and that's really punishable. But we cannot accept vandalism and define blockage in the cities. The director of Human Rights Watch, he was very critical about Colombia and the Colombian government. He has said that these blockage are not legitimate, and that the government, well, using their force, well, they need to remove these blockades because it affects the right to work, to health of 5 million people that live in Valle del Cauca. We have able to register that in this last 3.5 weeks, more than 120,000 doses of the vaccines haven't been able to apply in the Valle del Cauca. That's going to mean that people are going to die because of this. So my invitation is that yes, there are many things that need to be reformed in Colombia. Of course, those of us who have more, we need to pay more taxes. The tax reform that was proposed, many people didn't like greater taxes to capital, great taxes to income, and greater taxes to equity, and eliminated a lot of tax reductions for individuals. And it had a huge component of small transactions to the poorest families, of the 50% poorest families in the country, to help the situation. Colombia doesn't have how to have an income of 1 million pesos to each poor family in the country. It just doesn't have a way to do it because this is a very poor country. It does have to do 350,000. It's not enough, but it's going to help these families to eat. And well, that was part of that reform. So I completely agree with Colombian people, for those of us who have more, to pay more taxes, with which right now to have more opportunities of education and training, and to young people, and to dialogue. We understand your situation. We have a lot of people living in social media, which we all know that the real those that is there, well, it's not necessarily the greatest one. And of course, it's true, the privileged people of this society, even though many of them do things to help the rest, we haven't done enough, and we can do more. But if we suffocate each other, if we close the economy, and if we destroy employment, destroy companies in of every size, well, the only thing that we're going to do is to make the country even poorer.
So our call as a private sector on the Cauca is that yes, we are willing to give more taxes. We are willing to have more opportunities, to have more possibilities, but we have to talk. We have to get to a middle ground. We have to work together, and let's not smother economy that is really poor after a really dreadful year that is going to make us poorer afterwards. Thank you so much.
Esteban, muchísimas gracias
Esteban, thank you so much for this testimony.
para saludarla.
I take advantage of this moment to greet more than 500 people that we have in Zoom and the other more than 100 that are joining us in this moment in Facebook. I believe that this is the proper time after listening to the stance of one of the representatives of the entrepreneurs, of the business people of our country. So to give back the word and to ask you again, maybe Felix or Lilibeth,
Sus perspectivas al respecto.
can you give us your perspective on the matter? And I think that Esteban talked about something that is important.
Los espectadores nos están haciendo y es precisamente qué piensan los organizadores del paro frente a actos de saqueo a mano armada y a múltiples formas en las que el vandalismo también ha afectado a los sectores comerciantes, transportadores, etcétera, etcétera. Entonces, ¿qué opinión les merece a ustedes y cómo ven que esto pueda tomar un camino diferente?
Vale. Bueno, yo voy a iniciar y de pronto Félix me complementará. A nosotros, por ejemplo, nos sucedió algo bastante curioso en la ciudad de Cúcuta y es que luego de los primeros días de movilización, en efecto, el 28A, como lo dijo,
The first day of mobilization, actually,
fue una movilización que nunca nos dimensionamos acompañar.
as they become said, it was a movement to start for the people that are watching us from the city of Cucuta. We are working in diverse ways, but from the rate of not of A, we are supporting the network. Something that we've been trying to do from the last year, 25 November, and we have been to exercise right to protest and to build actions to help women, not only in Cucuta, another Santander. And my coworker Felix Mario has been supporting the youth movement in Cucuta. After all these mobilization days,
We advocate for the non-violence. We always work like promoting the exercise, the constitutional exercise of the right to protest.
En el marco de las movilizaciones,
We're talking about the mobilization. We have some situations in Cucuta, some threats in Cucuta. We don't know specifically which people were in charge of these, but this mobilization were not only summoned by men and women, they were also called by the group, by the groups, different groups of Cucuta. We had also teachers. We have people from universities, from all the different universities in the city, public universities, private universities. We had the citizenry as a whole. So when we were summoning the groups and we were leading them, we always had a starting point and an ending point, and we had cultural and other words. But sometimes we had some people that indeed were doing some misdemeanors, and that's where the discrimination were going to some other people. Oh, we have these rioters that were moving this. We had banned when we started doing artistic expression and cultural expressions. We said anti-Eurobist and anti-patriarchal city in one of the main cities of the place in certain sector in the city we're feeling uncomfortable. We're saying anti-revista and anti-patriarchal, and we said they say Cucuta is not like that, and we said that is what we want to be. The people want Cucuta to be like that, and Norte de Santander to be like that, and we were adding to this expression in many parts of the country. And afterwards we start saying that we had La Gabarra anti-revista, Catatumbo anti-revista, and I was like, wow, for us to be like some catalyst of the work that we have done in the department is something that we also started questioning but we are not vandals and we are not guerrilla fighters either. We don't want to go phasing and fighting against the public forces. That's not what we want to do. And even in front of the commander of the San Mateo police, the graffiti has painted with all the group three times a single bridge that says psychopath government. And they were uncomfortable with that. They felt uncomfortable, but we haven't used force against the public force. And what we want is the local government and the department government not to call us as vandals or guerrilla fighters just because we are expressing a different stance that one they have. And within the framework of everything that has happened lately, we have seen that our city is heavily militarized. And we as women, we feel uncomfortable because going out of the street and seeing a tank going by, it creates psychological violence because our city is not moving or is not rioting, is not being abandoned. And we ask why we have this type of action. Why are we normalizing this type of violence? And there are no warranties of human rights. So I question myself a lot because indeed in certain parts of the country it has happened, but I know that a lot of people is exerting their right to protest in different ways, and I respect every single person that is moving from the art, from the culture, but I also uh, vouch for the people that is resisting in the universities, that is letting them suffer with tear gas and others to be filled with water. And I respect their courage, even though if I cannot do that, I respect others. But I don't know, Felix, what do you think about that question that Lorena has?
Sí, yo creo que es crucial lo que dices al final,
Yes, I think that is
porque
essential what you were mentioning. We
varios
have
aspectos de
shown in
cómo pues
several
la ciudad
occasions
comienza
how
a
the
desorganizarse
police officers
y
start
esto
with
siempre es
the
un proceso de
riots, start
disciplina, ¿no?
fighting, and they
Yo
just
hay un
want
código
to
que
take
cuando los
dissipate
delincuentes
everybody. They
hacen
said
algo
when the
y
blocks were
comienzan con
creating
violencia
some
con
dire
manera proporcional,
problems,
pero
they can be
hemos
work
visto
with
que
proportional
a un
force.
grupo de
But
personas, por ejemplo,
we can see that a
están en un
group of people, for
concierto y
example, in
vuelven y
pastors or
les
people in
matan
the
a la
guy in the
gente,
concert, this
¿cierto?
mad, the
Y me
anti-riot
parece
force came
supremamente
just to
grave
disperse everybody, and
porque
that is
entonces hay gente
serious
que
because the
resiste
problem is that the
se
people that
se le
is
acusa.
holding is
Y eso
resisting is
parece supremamente
accused, and
conveniente, ¿no? Por parte
that
del
is
gobierno, por
extremely
parte
convenient by
de
the
esta
government
población de miedo.
and by the
Y eso
establishment,
también es lo que
considering
genera
this fear
inseguridad
mongering and this philosophy
sigan
that they
dando
want
cosas
to
de que ya
perpetuate.
mismo
So it is
los mismos
important
guardias
to take
empiezan a
this
decir
vision
que pues
aside,
son
this aseptic
infiltrados,
vision
que
that
gente que
only
los
infiltrated
convence, pero
people.
eso es una
Well,
gran
we young
desinformación la
people
que
have
realiza
a
la sociedad
large distrust
especialmente en Colombia.
of the
¿No?
establishment in
Pues y a
Colombia.
través de la policía
And
hace unos años
not even, I
hay
mean, let's
calles
talk
que
about
mucha
police.
se siente
When we go to the
amenazado
police,
con muertes,
we
con
feel that we
desapariciones,
are
con
being
delitos de no sé qué,
violated
por
by people that
cuando
is
en realidad
authority
muchas
just because
víctimas
they
ni
have a
siquiera
uniform,
conocen sus
where the
nombres,
legitimate
¿sí? Y
respect, the
empiezan a usar
legitimate
violencia y
authorities are earned by
generalmente en el caso
respect,
que esta
and
persona
they
está
start
libre,
abusing, and we
lo
have
dejan
to say
aparecido, los
stop.
atropellan a
But how
diario.
many people are
Realmente
really
eso
violated every single day, and
atenta
they
contra la
have a lot of
institución
hatred and a lot of
democrática
resentment
y
against the
civilización.
police and against other
El tema
institutions?
de los saqueos, por ejemplo. Bueno,
So
¿qué
the
esperan los
pillaring,
países que si
the
alguien
pillaging,
roba
for
viene y
example,
se
we
roba
have
los
a
saqueos?
society without
¿Sí?
work, without job, without
Muchísimo, todo está muy
education. What
militarizado.
is the response? We have to militarize the
No,
towns then,
mismo
and to say, well,
como
it's dreadful everything
no
that is
puede ser
happening,
sujeto a lo
as
policial.
if it
Y al
weren't
responder la
a
sociedad a
public
mejorar
affair,
las
working and
condiciones
answering to a
para
society,
seguir
improving these conditions. And what
viviendo
they
en
do,
esta
they keep
categoría
investing
humana.
in
Esto
jets,
es
in
una
tanks, and things like that.
entonces
This is a
comienza
complete
esta
abuse, and
esquizofrenia
we still
de que
see
el
this
gobierno
schizophrenia of this government
pidiendo que nos
that is
podamos
still
comportar
asking
como
us
para estar
to
de acuerdo con
behave
estas
just to
personas que
be. But
simplemente
how many
comprenden que no
people
están
they have
equivocadas.
in a dire poverty, in a dire inequality?
Mira,
That's something
justamente
absurd.
podemos
So,
ver en
what paths
en
can
las
we
últimas
see in the
reuniones
future,
con algunos
in the short
movimientos
meetings that we have had
presidentiales, porque
that
como el
have been
movimiento
completely
Juventud
informal?
Justa,
Because as the
nosotros hemos
movement in
reunido
Cucuta,
con alguna
we
institución
haven't
ya
met with
y
any
llegamos a que
institution
nos impongan lo
because
que
we
nosotros
refuse
queremos.
to set the rhythms of institutionality to take the things fast. We know that democratic processes have their own challenges,
Nosotros
and we are doing these processes.
previendo que todas las personas
But
puedan
seeing
participar
that
de
everybody
forma
can
verdaderamente
participate and
democrática
they
y
can
aquí
be
la
democratic and inclusive,
el
but
primer paso que nosotros
the
hacemos
first complaint that we have is, what do you want to listen? What else do you want to listen from us? Because we have had a lot of proposals for a long time, and it's only in this moment when they say, oh, we want to listen to you, and they want to make us an instrument again. And we said, no, we are sorry. Before anything, we need to have an accountability of everything that you have done for the youth. What have you done? What have been the investment from the government, from the mayor's office, from the national office? So we propose everything. Everything is kept as the same, and nothing happens. So this distrust is rising, and they don't want to talk about this distrust. And we believe that this is something that where we cannot have a real dialogue with institutionality, and there is a huge impasse. So I would like to answer with that.
Muchas gracias, Félix.
Thank you so much, Felix. Yes, you give us a lot of perspectives, and I would like to reiterate the same question. And with this perspective about where are we going to take this to Calais, and maybe David can tell us a bit about how do we see the situation, how the civil society is incurring in different actions, and how these actions are seen as vandalism, and we have talked about possible features. What is your perspective on the matter? Well, the first thing that we have to consider that is that we're talking about a structural problem. A structural problem has to be worked with everybody: the politicians, the president, the students, social leaders, and community as a whole. Every single citizen that is going or marching, that is creating a blockage, is contributing to this process. So, in this breaking point, where are we? If we don't do that now, when are we going to do it? As Galvis was saying before, obviously what the group and the capitalism is interested is not to lose their business, and they are always talking about money, 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 but there is nothing that comes from the heart that can be shared with the citizenry. And this is something that is a complex issue, and we know that we have vandals, and we don't know how many vandals we have, and they continue talking about the country, and we talking about large vandals, because Mr. Pierre Hitra was saying there's not a 80 billion trillions. Let's say 80, let's say 40 trillions, but we cannot justify that either 80, 40, 20, 10. We're just justifying that the corruption is a terrible problem, and that's the thing that we have to work. Second, we have to clarify that the public forces, especially SMAD, has left their communities without a head. They haven't intervened, and they have wanted to create anarchy in the community so that you can justify the armed intervention of the government with a martial law. That is what they want to do, and they have a public background. Is the next coming elections, and they are quite afraid of losing the power because we have the elections and the real change of power. We're not saying who or whom, but the community is defined or is decided to see that the change of the government is now, and we have to certify only the ones that have the economic power or the scarcity, or other ones that are working or that have a stress. But everyone has to contribute for the change of the world, and this is the most complex thing. And people say that the blockage, and they are always talking about money, 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 as if the world was only money. Well, we are human beings, and it's not only economy. It's the love for the citizenry, is to love each other. And we, from this perspective, we are not pretending the country to break itself, to have the country exploding. No, the country is exploding because it is going to explode, because the ones that are leading our country don't have a real perspective, a real option to say something to a work of the community. I mean, it's really hard. The negotiator, the most important negotiator that we have is the peace commissioner, and then it's not a peace commissioner, it's the war commissioner. We know that he is angry, that he has a lot of hatred. And when we have a peace commissioner like this, it's difficult to start establishing dialogues with the strike committee. And the baselines are not paying attention to this, because the first line young people, they have pain because their friends have been murdered. And who shot first? will that we have records that we have young people in some barricades that they have shot, but in response to what the government has done, that have been the stance. Now the people is not afraid of COVID. We were afraid of COVID because we were talking that we have been a year in pandemic, of course, but with this year they have started doing things and people have grown tired and sick of it. I know people is not thinking about the pandemic, even though the pandemic is killing people, but we also have a record from the community. We have to analyze before April 28th, the average people have had 490 to 500 people, and they are still the same because we have 490 people deceased. So it's not that true that the marches and the people went out of the streets, we're going to have it worse and we were going to lose a huge amount. It's not that true because the statistics are showing the same. And we have statistics. What we call the government and the guild is, well, we have to concur and not to talk bollocks, as they were saying. And what they want to do is to appease the people, and they want to work with the negotiation rhythms, which is difficult sometimes to put everybody in the same terms and the different parts of the country, and they are working with a change for the government. So my exercise here is to try to tell you that there is a reality in the communities. On May the 4th, where SMAD is killing these people when they have more than 20 people murdered. The next day, the police officers left this place and they left the police stations abandoned. Now, with these 100,000 inhabitants that we have in the Commune 20 in Cali, there is not a single police officer. There is not a police officer. So how are they living? We have people that is armed to protect their buildings. People are going back to bed earlier. And when Kevin was making the shots of what we have in the proposal in the museum, we were talking a bit about the analogy of the Clean Christmas operation in 1985. There was operation of 3,000 military officers again versus 30 people of the M19, and they were not many against 3,000, but they had some guns to fight. Now the young people are working with slings, with rocks, and we have ladies also, where we have people that are fighting with children. We are also the first line and how they were being hit. So, of course, we don't want violence on one side or the other, but the one that has the power of stopping this is the government and by negotiating. And we have to have a dignified exit so that we can achieve something, because otherwise we are going to continue this in 2 or 3 years. We're going to come back to square one, and if nothing happens because the structure of the government isn't changing. So let's agree with with the different trades, but not only to say that they are going to lose billions and trillions of pesos, because that's everything. So why don't we say, let's do a joint exercise with the community. Let's do a social work where the students can have the possibility of going to university. Or tell me about the private universities, if they have reduced the fees, the tuition fees, if they have reduced that. No, that hasn't happened ever. So what is the problem? Uh, so from the other hand, they want to put us in the communities, and especially the young people that are the killers, the murders. So why are they vandals? Why are they working abroad with, or they are not studying? Are they just the young people, the ones that are responsible for the miseries? Are we going to have people that are losing education, the lack of opportunities? In the case of Cauca Valley, here we have a public university, and we need to have good scores of the ICFES, and maybe even some of the scores to be there. So we have to check that with ISATEX and with different banks so that the children can go to private universities. And of course, it's a complex situation. But when we talk about this, calling to the calm from both sides to be sitting and to talking with the people that have been chosen by the people and the strike committee to start talking about this. So if Mr. Banker says that they are illegal or not, well, of course, the current ministry or government has said something wrong and is the same. It's like to create a protest thought room and put people raging, and let's just have a club then, and if they want to shut it, that's it. No, that's not the case. The venues of the protest are the streets. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, David. we have dire results for the communities. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm deeply sorry. I would like to give you more time to talk, but also let's give the floor to Esteban for a second because he wants to give his reactions on what we have just discussed. And of course, how, Esteban, how do you see the situation can take a different path? Well, it's a complex situation. What David is saying, it's true. It's a movement that has a lot of heads. Some know what they want, some others don't. Some are tired, some are stressed and hungry, and they want to protest. And of course, it has other dynamics that we have in Cali that are very dangerous. So again, I feel that we have to talk and we have to find a different option for this. For example, I'm not crying for the loss because they are hitting me or not. I'm talking because we are a poor country. The development process is cumulative to create entrepreneurial tissue, a robust one that can create productivity and prosperity. It takes time. It's easier to destroy it than to create it. In the 90s, we had the loss of a lot of companies that left Cali. So when a company is dissolved, is saddening. Of course, the loss of a young person is worse, but the company is gathering capabilities to give conditions to the society and is paying taxes, generating employment. But it's so sad that this tissue is lost because it gives us less tools and less possibilities to answer to the needs of the population. And I understand the private university. My dad works with a private university that devotes every single penny that they have to give a scholarship to young people with low income, and he's the one that creates more added value on the exams, on the entrance and the output exit exams. They have the best outcome. And 20 years ago, it was a highly elitist. Um, University. They only had a set of careers, and then now it's a real university where most of the people that are working is working with social sciences, basic sciences, humanities, and others, and where the most of the people are coming from other places with some tools that are given by the state for these matters and also for others. So that is an effort for the the private area. One of the best universities in Cali was donated by private, is kept by private sector, and nowadays, unlike the Albert Einstein Hospital or the Las Caras Hospital that are the best in Latin America, they are tending to subsidize people, and they are attending people from all the Pacific, Colombian Pacific. So, of course, we need resources. Our productive tissue, even though in the valley is one of the richest and is the one of the most sophisticated and diverse, is not enough to give employment to all the population that we have and that is coming from the other the outskirts that have need opportunities. Of course, we need to work better on the redistribution, and of course that can be done through taxes as the northern countries does. But they are working on a private sector that is vibrant, that is innovative, that is strong, that is growing. In the chamber, we have done a huge effort so that we can do better companies to work with a better impact. We have some providers from Choco, from other areas. We have one that is coming from San Marcos, that is Remy Calero, that he should have been invited to this place. He walked 20 kilometers to go to some technical training in Cali, and now has a company with 400 people. Most of them are mothers of with a single households. So it's easy to destroy that to build. Destroy our transportation system. What do we do? Yeah, they have problems that is imperfect. It takes time, etc. But don't. What do we do? What do we achieve with this? We're destroying small companies. What do we do by increasing in unemployment? Any strike in the world has blockages. We can see what happens in Paris when the peasants or the farmers come with the tractors and they are blocking everything. But undefinite blockages for 3 weeks and a half. Yesterday, for example, in Chile, they had protests for a whole year. They were more violent than in Colombia with a lot of division and larger as well. But the company never stopped working. I mean, the supply chains for vaccine for the oxygen for hospitals, to take the trash out, to have the people to work, for the water and everything. Everything was working at the same time that we have protests and that carries with violence. So the blockages are unacceptable because they become a business. Many of them have become a business because we have a toll. They are having vandals, they are stopping people, and they start looking at them what they have, and that cannot go onwards. And we need to have dialogue and commitment, etc. But an indefinite blockage cannot happen. The strikes are created to create discomfort in people, to take more time in the traffic, etc. But they cannot be indefinite because they affect 50 million of Colombians, especially the poorest ones.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Lilibeth and David
Félix,
and
Esteban,
Felix,
mil
Esteban.
gracias
Thank you
por
so
habernos
much.
escuchado.
Colombia has heard you,
Yo me siento muy
and
honrada de
I
compartir
am
espacio
quite
con
humble
usted.
and honored of being in
Lamentablemente
this
no
space
les
with you.
quedo, no hemos
Unfortunately, we
continuar la
cannot
conversación.
go on and on with this
Continuación tenemos el
discussion
panel
because coming up next we have the
Evidencia.
panel called Evidence.
A quienes nos sintonizan, mil
To the
gracias
ones that
por
are with us in
acompañarnos.
this moment, thank you
Los
so
invito
much
a
for joining us.
participar en el
Please
segundo panel
do
y
not
de
leave. We have the
repetirse
second
personas
panel, and
más
let's continue listening to these
importantes.
important and
Muchas
urgent
gracias a todos.
conversations. Thank you so much to all of you. Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias.
And we believe that the first panel that we had, um, we have a lot of things to talk about. Your second session to continue talking and debating. We're going to talk about the panel that's called evidences, and I'm going to tell you later on what we know to give some instructions to our guest today. Before that, I want to thank to these 23 universities that have gotten together to do this event that we have today. A lot of people, we have to give a lot of names to be fed on these acknowledgements, but let's leave it like that. 23 universities in Colombia and the United States as well. But I also want to thank to the Seminar of Anthropology in Colombia that is visiting us from the ICES University. Warm regards to them and congratulate you talking about Afro-Colombianity, as we said at the beginning of this event and this morning, is a very important day that is helping us to think about the circumstances where we have this national strike and the historical debts that we have as a country and as a society. So I'm going to start giving a little small mention to our networks where you can make a follow-up to the work that we do. Remember that we have a transmission that is done simultaneously in the website of Rutgers, more specifically in the program of criminal justice. The ones that want to follow us in Facebook on Spanish, they can do on anthropology, Sassy. But I think that you can have find all the other broadcasts that we have. And if we are in Zoom here with us, maybe you have to find some places where we can have the simultaneous translation for the ones that needs it, and we are glad to solve some things on the road. Now, on this evidence panel, we have 5 people that I'm going to present next really quickly because their trajectories will need a longer presentation. But I want you to know Vicente Moreno from the NGO of the Cultural House of Chontaduro, Alejandro Rodriguez of the NGO Temblores that has had an important role in these manifestations and protests on these 24 days already, Natalia Arenas from the portal of journalists of 070, Juan Diego Quesada from the El País journal in Spain. We have read several of his chronicles, and there is Munoz from France 24. So thank you so much and welcome all of you. I just want to give you 1 minute. We have around 15 minutes for the initial intervention, and afterwards, I'm going to start a session where we can have a conversation with different questions that we have in the chat or with the questions that we have prepared as organizers of this event. Maybe we'd like to mention the ones that are listening to us that the panel has an idea where when we talk about evidence, evidence have to deal with this role that you have as people that are working on generation of information on these mobilizations. Something that has been very relevant for these days is the management, the proper management, and is in other crisis situations that we have lived. How this information is being presented, how much is happening in the organizations or the people had a direct relations with the people that are related with this, so that we can have some information on the information that we have on the street. This information that can help us as a perspective to things that we have heard from the people from this morning. Of course, we invite you if you have, let's not call it anecdotes because they are really complicated social events. You can give us some context on what we're talking. So without further ado, we are going to continue in the order that I had. We're going to Vicente Moreno from the NGO Casa del Chontaduro. We hope that Vicente is there with us. And if we have to make a change, not a problem. Now we're going to greet Luis that he is with his camera. It's a pleasure to meet you, to see you. So Vicente, are you there? Yes, I'm here, but it doesn't allow me to activate the camera. Don't worry, we're going to fix it right now. And in the production, we are fixing this. Now, there you go. You can be there now. Vicenta, it is a pleasure to see all of you. I'm going to help you with the time, okay? Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me to this event. To me, it's really important to have the possibility of talking about these realities that we are suffering in Colombia as of now, and that have affected us in a long time. I would like to start saying that I am Vicenta Moreno. I'm a black activist. That part of the African proverb, I am because we are. And in this way, we I'm thinking about all the violence that have been established against my people. But also, I'm moved about the histories of resistance that we have from our forefathers. 170 people of legal abolition of slavery, and we are still working for the liberation.
To transform this Colombian state that is based and was based in the slavery of people and the death of our people. In this society, it's still normal for black people to die in a premature way in their halls of hospitals, ignored, mistreated, or as subjects of medical suspicious trials. It's normal for us to be the first line in the borders of death. For we are not being acknowledged. Our contribution to society is not acknowledged, nor now, not ever. So the Casa Cultural or Culture House El Chontaduro has been working for 35 years in this territory to which many people is afraid of. Many people do not even know or acknowledge as part of the city of Cali our population, and Cali being one of the blackest cities in Colombia, and not even then. And here is where we live, in this Agua Blanca district. As soon as people say that Agua Blanca, everyone shakes because it's a violent city, a violent district. Because as we, we are the people that we as black people are seen as dangerous. When normally has been built over centuries and centuries from the citizens, good citizens. We are not seen as good citizens, the people that deserve human treatment within that society, which is the black man and black woman. So to say that we are still at 170 years after they abolished slavery, we are still live a lot of discrimination, a lot of this colonial state. And to that end, the Culture House El Chontaduro has also done that work of finding strategies to give a new meaning to the life of our popular population, and especially also of our African Colombian people. Um, so here in the Agua Blanca district, we have most of the people that are being displaced from this country. This means that most black people that live in Cali live in Agua Blanca, according to official information. Actually, 70% of the black population in Cali lives in Agua Blanca. Under the worst conditions, which we know have nothing to do with the human part of things. And no one says anything. Everyone ignores us. And I was saying that we're in the first line of death. So to that end, checking the statistics on the information, uh, we find that 407 murders took place in 2020 only in the district of Agua Blanca, and everyone is quiet. Like that's normal. And also from here, from our association, we ask ourselves, who hurts, who heard about these deaths? Who talks about these deaths? But they talk about, oh, there's a lot of peasants, or not peasants, but hobos in Agualanca. That's a way of justifying the death of our people, and that has as it always has been. So I believe that in this 21st of May at 10:22 in the morning, we have to put that in evidence. Why? Because of course we care about the damages caused to the banks. Of course we don't agree with that. We're from Chontaduro. We are all established Pacific strategies and not vandalism, artistic strategy, and these are strategies of recovery of our memory, and these are strategies of audiovisual strategies of dialogue. But that hurts more. These damages hurt society more than the 407 deaths that happens in 2020. So that's a problem. And we should ask ourselves what the hell's going on. Because if we did not have this impact of information, they will call us resentful. And even with information, they call that we're resentful. Can you believe that? Because people cannot talk about that because we are in a country that has been established as an equal country. Rights equality is a country where everyone's equal, and that's BS. Where we are all people, that's BS as well. Um, that's a double morale that always has existed here because it's normal for us to die. The ones that are expendable, the no ones, is normal in this country that we can't keep having all the ways of death, from the social death till our physical death. And no one talks about it. So during this panel, well, we have been in all the different points of life, especially in
Puerto Resistencia.
the Puerto Resistencia point. That's where we have lived. And there, we have realized that most or many of the youth that are in the first line are still black young people too. So these are the young people that the police, the SMAT, or the anti-disturbance force, the anti-riot force comes and takes their lives with no remorse whatsoever to murder, um, because they're demanding their legal, legitimate rights of being able to demonstrate. Um, the ones that have suffered the most consequences and the ones that have seen the most havoc are not the people in the strikes. We have seen all the social mess that we're living under. So, of course, all the people that are not taken care of, all the people that cannot go to any the factories to work, and they suffer the consequences. They never had the possibility to go to the factories to work, and the people that have never had to work, that's why they go and protest. That's why they look from the outlook of the bad people. So that's why they go out and protest, a way of showing that they're there, that they exist, that you cannot hide me because I'm poor and I have no opportunities. So it's a situation that it's really too serious, to be honest. Too serious because they ask us what's the exit of this problem. We are saying, oh, the exit has to be negotiated, it has to be to talk, but to negotiate and talk, we need willpower. We need the will of the government. And if we, and when we don't see the will of the government to talk, that's really frustrating. But well, in all during all the situation, we also have realized that even though many of our first line young people are black young people, they in the midst of us decided that we're all equal or so-called equal. Well, we we see that the death is normalized due to the racism that we live in the country and that we see in the city. So we have also been talking with them, and we still have a long way to go to understand a little bit that reality, both from them and especially from the other young people that don't suffer racism but suffer poverty and other harsh realities. So we also decided that's important if we are the people that contribute the most deaths to this problematic problem. What they want to establish in this reform, even if it wasn't approved, but we're seeing all the havoc of lack of healthcare, unemployment, pension funds, because I live here in Agua Blanca and most of our people don't have a pension because they have been working in an independent way. So we have been living the effects of that reform even before it's passed, and we we also have a point amongst all this presentation of black reality in the Agua Blanca district, which we have called Afro Resistance Point. And here in the new bridge of Agua Blanca is where we directly go every day and demonstrate our needs. They massacred five people. So it's a way to give memory to these five people. It's a point in which it will be possible to negotiate that reality that we're going through right now as black people. And for that, I also would like to play you guys a video. Sorry, Vicenta. We have 15 minutes for each intervention. So does the video, you will have a minute and a half to play this video. Or should we show it later on? Well, the video is 3 minutes long, so I'm going to round things up and then we can play the video. No problem. So part of the challenges that we have as black community in this city have has to do with the fact that we need to deactivate that colonial state that doesn't allow us to live a good and proper dignified life. It's not possible for us to have a dignified life in a state that is structured and built, especially with the colonial bases that are bases in which black people, it's our slaves for the rest of of the humanity. So when you're a slave, you're dead. So I would like to wrap up with that conclusion and thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Vicenta. Sorry for interrupting you and for the short time. That's the cause of including so many voices. So I'm pleased to say hi to you. So we're going to continue with Alejandro Rodriguez from the NGO Temblores. Let me stress upon this fact. This circumstances, this 24 days of national strike for many people has been centuries of being oppressed. For some people, have been 24 days. So to have that evidence and that vision, it's paramount. It's really important in the capability and of doing that. Vicente, I would like to thank you for that. Thank you so much. And from your experience, we see that you guys are living through a rough time. Alejandro, hi to you. We hope you're doing well, and the floor is yours. You have between 12 to 15 minutes to do your intervention. Thank you. Well, very good morning. I would like to say hi to everyone here, Vicenta, Luis, Natalia, Enrique, and to everyone that's following the stream. It's a pleasure to be here and sharing with you guys. Well, my name is Alejandro Rodriguez. I'm here from Bogota. I'm part of the NGO Temblores, and especially I'm here as a coordinator of the Police Brutality Observatory. And we have the platform that's called Grita, which is Scream in Spanish, which we created in 2019. So I have a presentation to show you images. Let me share it with you guys. Here it is. If you can see it, just let me know. There you go. We can see it really well. Thank you. All right. An NGO Temblors this NGO is born in 2017 from other processes that were happening back then, and we have our objective is to activate and mobilize community processes of social transformation that can shock the hegemonic structure that guarantees the maintenance of exclusion, violence, discrimination, and systemic denial of community rights and population rights of people and communities that have been historically ignored and marginalized by the state. So, and by different social groups. So, we were born from an outlook and out being illusion to live in a more equal country and to contribute in this goal that post-conflict we're imagining back then after the so-called war. But now we see the need of keep working and creating strategies to contribute to the fulfillment of human rights of marginalized population. For example, people that live on the streets, um, people that are drug addicts, homeless people, etc., etc. People that have been always been vulnerable. And now let's talk about police brutality. A lot of these people, um, a lot of these people suffer police brutality. Is one of the main perpetrators of violence against these marginalized communities, right? Um, the police, just by constitutional order, is body, the body in charge of keeping order, and I say order in quotation marks because we have a what because we have what's order first of all. What's an ordered space? What's space that lives under law and order? So under that idea of order, there's a lot of populations that are being marginalized and excluded in the day on a day-to-day basis. So on one hand, in our the observatory, we see the need of having strategies and doing research that can contribute to the diagnosis of the situation. So, for the year 2018, we started this research paper called Silencio Oficial or Be Quiet Officer. It's justice created by the 20 years of the ESMAD, which is the anti-riot police in the states in Colombia. Um, the Colombian state funded the creation of these armed institutional bodies with the objective of fighting and contribute to this war against drug trafficking. This war against, but this has not been effective whatsoever because as the SMAT is born, or the anti-riot police is born in Colombia, what we did is a diagnosis of how many people have been murdered by this police entity in social context. People that work in the public space just demanding the rights, right? So people that were able to protest, ask for deep transformations for their immediate surroundings in the framework of the right to demonstrate uh, yourself and ask for your rights. So there, there have been three populations that have been the most affected by these murders by the SMAT, or the anti-rap police, which is the indigenous population, the peasant population, and the student population. And here we see that there's a differentiated character of the police exercise violence about on these people over other populations in the country. So the differential approach is not to protect the diverse citizen, but to attack it and vulnerabilize it and fight against it. So this has been the most vulnerable population. Something happens when we're close to publish this report. When we're currently publishing this report, like the huge mobilization in 2019 happened in November 2019, and we were close to publish it. And then in over those months, Dylan Cruz is murdered. And then downtown Bogota, everyone saw how he was murdered by this anti-riot police. So they start also, of course, trying to show that this is a lethal force that always violates the human rights and your right to protest. They have been killing them since 2019, and today, and over the last few days, we are almost 30, 42, 44 murders from the S by the SMAT since 2019. So it's important to mention that the police force not only exercises violence against people in protest context that happens on a day-to-day basis in many populations, just as Vicente mentioned. For example, black people suffer that, but this indigenous population also suffers this type of violence. And then we have the impulse of generating a dialogue on how do we see this interaction between the city and the police on a day-to-day basis. And that's where we get this investigation that we call Bolillo, Dios y Patria, or Baton, God and Country. Um, in the national police, one of the main things that they teach a policeman is to answer Dios y Patria, or God and Country, to its higher ranking officer. So we see that over that Dios y Patria, or God and Country, they have to say Bolillo, which is the baton with which they beat protestants, they beat demonstrators. So what we started to see is that within this notion of God and country, well, they're leaving behind a lot of citizens and ways of being in the public scenario, in the public stage. It's a very close way of what the country is. So the patria for them is just like their own people. We started this research in the beginning of last year, and based on information that Medicina Legal gives us. Medicina Legal is the coroner's department in Colombia, and we are based in that for information forensic medicine. The forensics department in Colombia gives us this information of how many people have been victims of physical violence, sexual violence, and murders. And in the first 3 years in the implementation of the new police code, which is this code that regulates police action, but also the citizens in the public scenario, in the public stage. So we see that in these 3 years, there have been 313 victims of physical violence all over the country, which is that one of the most people that have suffered the most violence are people that use drug users. We see that there has been 289 victims of murders. One of the most vulnerable populations is the African Colombian population, with 39% of the share of the victims, and 102 victims of sexual violence by the police. These are really concerning figures because we're trying to create a contrast on the access to justice, and we see that this 39,000 events of facts have only had two prosecutions by the Attorney General's office. Only two prosecutions have happened out of 39,000, right? And out of sexual assault, by the police, no prosecutions have happened. So it's a difficult situation. There's a lot of impunity, and of course, this drives the city to be. It makes people afraid to report these facts of violence. So, aiming to counter-attack this situation, our work as NGO, well, we have been trying to create different strategies of strategic litigation with which we aim to reduce this relationship between the police brutality and citizens, because we see that this new police code gives an administrative faculties that sanction different populations differently. So we had an intervention in, in a lawsuit to the police code in which we achieved for people just by carrying drugs, they shouldn't be prosecuted and sanctioned with penalties, because with this police code there are sanctions and there are penalties and there are physical punishment for these people. And also we achieved on a ruling for homeless people to not be fined for going to the bathroom in the streets because they have nowhere to go. This police code sanctioned these citizens just for going to the bathroom in the street, but they cannot, they they have nowhere to do it. So also we also achieve in order to local governments. So we could put public bathrooms in the cities with the objective, of course, of guaranteeing this right to go to a dignified bathroom, even though if you live on the street at least 3 times a day. So with this context and with this situation, a shortage of reporting, et cetera, well, we believe that it's necessary to have this reports out of this private space of texts and enter to be in the public scenario. So here, what we see here is that la policía no me cuida, or the police doesn't take care of me. We show some figures, real life figures. The police has murdered 289 people over 3 years. And we give the floor to our proposal, which is the other great work that we're doing in the Observatory of Registry and reception of police brutality reports. In this intervention during on the Pedagogical University of Bogota, we put a QR code that takes us to our Grita platform, screen platform, where which is Grita means recording, registering, and assist. It's an acronym that also means scream. So, with the aim and the goal of giving them to give the citizens a tool on counter attacking this situation with the police, well, we created this platform that leads us to our webpage in which we provide them a tool with which people can report and can get closer to us, and we can see what this means. Because something that we see in Colombia, there's a difficult situation in which the Attorney General's office is going directly to the military justice, and military justice is the justice in charge of investigating these officers that commit these horrible acts against the city, and the Attorney General's office is just forwarding this report under figure of acts of service. And what we see is that, for example, they're sending for the acts of sexual violence to the military justice system, which of course it's really concerning. They're not going through the general and regular justice of the country. So that's a problem. That's a huge problem that we see. Murders, nothing is being reported to the normal justice. So this is not an act of service, and that's what we want to change. We want to consolidate strategies to reduce the situation, and of course achieve and consolidate litigation, strategic litigations that are collective class actions in which we can transform this legal action, the acts of service that lead to impunity or lawlessness. So in Grita, we have been doing this ever since 2019, and in the beginning of this year, we have been sending reports of the situation that's going on and creating early warnings to everything that's happening. Alejandro, Alejandro, we have 1 minute so you can wrap up. Sorry to interrupt you, man. Okay. And for you to have an idea, we're used to receiving 100 cases per month, And now with this news, national strike, the situation explodes. And the situation overflows, and over the 3 weeks we have 2,387 cases of police brutality through a platform. So that started in the 20th of April. So this situation that's being gets more and more critical, and it's really concerning to see how over the last 3 weeks we have 43 murders, um 18 victims of sexual assault, and see how these practices get and more serious and more systematic every time. So I will stop there so we can take advantage and listen to other people. Thank you, Alejandro. Sorry to interrupt you, man. um I'm sorry to interrupt so abruptly. I think that Temblores, we have been following them in one other way. Thank you guys for your work, and thanks to the work that you guys have carried out, we have information that helps to contrast our information. That happens also with Natalia Arenas. I want to say hi to you, director of 070 or 070. We are really lucky to get to know about countries that decades ago managed information in a pretty reduced way. So I think it's going to be really important to hear from you, Natalia. Hi to you, and thank you for being here.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for the invitation and warm regards to the people that is listening to us and the panelists that are working with us today. I have a small presentation too, so I'm going to put it on the screen if it's possible.
Ahí me dicen si,
Listo,
ven.
Can you tell me, can I see your presentation? Yes, please just click on start presentation. Thank you. I would like to start telling you a bit, introducing myself. I'm Natalia Arenas. I'm a journalist of the 070 magazine, that is an independent digital media that is inside the Los Andes University. Um, we have been working with a lot of evidence, with open evidence on different research and different investigations, and I want to make a short recount of the different investigations to show the work that we have been doing. So the first thing that I wanted to tell you is that this research has been done through four different elements: forensic elements, multimedia narrative, classic report, and collaborative reports. In these collaborative reports, we are not only working the people from the, but also small international elements. And also we have worked with regional journalists, especially in this context of the strike of April 28th. Also working with different teachers that are working inside the university that are supporting our work on 070. So these research started on the street, on the Calle 19 con Cuarta, 19th with 4th, where Dylan Cruz was killed. He died on the 25th, but he received the shot on November the 23rd of 2019 on the strike. We did this research. It was the second to second of the shot that killed Dylan Cruz, where we reenacted all the elements that took death to our allies, to our partners. I want to make a small clarification. I'm going to show some strong images for the people that are seeing us and listening to us. We had evidence on open sources that we had. On these images, we can see the impact, the shot that Dylan Cruz received in the head. We can see a shot of the beanbag that was shot by an asthmatic agent. So we started doing what we usually, the journalists do, is that we gather a lot of information, work where we had a lot of people of having a lot of the information available in media to try to organize it, to analyze it, and to try to understand what happened with this. So gathering a lot of videos with classic journalism, not only in social media, we were able to identify the agent that shot him, who is this man with the number 003478. We identified him because we have several video that we found that he had this gun that he shot before impacting Dylan Cruz. And we can see in these videos, we had some video that didn't have released before in the media. We can see the different images and how this agent is getting close to the place that we have the manifestation. And in the end, we were able to prove that he was the one who shot him. We continue with a jail on March 21st of 2020 as the measures of the pandemic were starting being implemented due to the pandemic and quarantine in Bogota. There was a riot in La Modelo jail. That is, Model prison is one of the largest prisons in the country with an overcrowd, a huge overcrowd. There was a mutiny because the prisoners were asking for measures to avoid contagion with the COVID-19. And in this prison, there was violence seized by the government forces, where we had 24 prisoners that were killed and more than 100 were injured by firearms. So one more time, we took all the material that was available in the social networks, and that was also recorded by the same prisoners that were part of this. This is part of the interesting part of this research, that the information, the evidence that came on what we had came from the citizens themselves. Is the people that were recording this in real time, have being in danger and setting this in media and sharing this with the people themselves. So the work was again to gather all this information and to have it properly organized in the time and space to understand what happened in these 7 hours that were really terrible. You can see these shots of the prison and the places where we can identify dead people and places where the videos were recorded. I would like to show this in more detail, but that's what we can do for now. And then in the whole city and in the neighboring municipality of Soacha next to Bogota, on September 9 and 10th of 2020, in the two cities, we had 13 people killed, the most of them killed by the police. And we, one more time, we took the information available in the media and we started organizing it, not only to understand what happened, but also to be able to give evidence on the abuse of violence of the police that night. These 2 nights, because it was September 9th and 10th. We were able to understand that in 17 CAIs, that are police stations that are scattered around the city, we had evidence of police officers shooting against the protesters, and we locate them in this map. And on top of this, we did five research on video, where we build the facts again of everything that was happening in these open sources, the classic report on the media, collaborative media, and the other elements that we were mentioning before. These four research not only were able to recover 7 of the 13 killings, but also we had evidence of the presence of people with hoods next to police that the ombudsman of Bogota was calling para police officers, as they were recorded in video, and we saw that appeared again in this national strike of 2021. So coming up next, and now it's national. Now this strike of April 21st has taken pretty much all the national territory, and we came to do the same again. And the first thing that we did is what we published the map, where we are geotagging and locating after verifying the different videos that we have received on the media and that we have recovered through this on the terrain, the violence that we had within the protest. As you can see, the case of Cali is evident that this has been one of the foci where we have had more violence in these protests. And first of all, we focus on locating the people that have died, that have been murdered with the protest, but we have some other facts like some shots by the police officers, some shots without a source, a proper source reported, and we don't know who is being reported. We see injured people, shooting, police officers shooting, and others, etc. So we focus this video and we have been updating these every day with the information that we can report, we can show on a large team that is working on this project, and we are doing also research more accurate on the specific cases with excess of violence and abuse from the police and actions from the government. And amidst all this process, as journalists, we have found two paradoxes. The first one is that the evidence for the journalism has changed and the evidence doesn't make the work easier. In the past, that we had an idea that the journalists were having a little piece of a specific information, and from these we can create a story. Now the evidence is massive, is a lot, is flooding our devices and our social media. And that means that our work is to review this information, to organize the chaos amidst all this publishing that we have every single day for denouncers by the citizens. And this is frustrating because it's a lot of volume of information and not much time to analyze it. And every day we have more events that we have to geotag, that we have to analyze, and we have to set in a context within the framework of this investigation. So that will be the first one. And the second one is that the evidence is can be manipulated and it has lost its value in legal terms. And this is even more frustrating than the prior one. I wanted to talk about these four headlines that we had that were telling us that we're giving. Sorry, we are being redundant, but they are telling us how this is not so effective to take these people that are committing these crimes to trial, to justice, to create memory, as Vicente was saying on these facts. So, for example, in the case of Dylan Cruz, the last report that we had from the police said that the Dylan crossed on the shooting range for to the ESMAD leader, and after one long year of the events that happened in La Modelo prison, where the general attorney said that there were torture and destruction of evidence, there are not people responsible for these facts. The case of September 11th, September 9th, sorry, only four members of the police have resulted with indictments, and these are cases where we have done some follow up, where we were able to attest that the bullet with which these people were impacted is of the weapon that these people had, these police officers had that day. Only 4 out of 13. But we know that after the next day, these areas were wiped, they were cleaned, and in some cases, the bullet came in and out, and the bullet was not left as an evidence. So this has also favored impunity. And finally, within the current national movement, we are talking about four cases that have been clarified out of 15, where we know that there are more 40 victims. And one of these cases is of a police officer that was captured. But what about the others? Despite the magnitude of the evidence, the amount of evidence, they haven't been taken to justice. And these the clarifying of the general attorney's office, it is used in a rather general manner, that as a headline said of silla vacía, more than clarifying is making things darker, because it takes into the same context many different progresses inside the research, something small sometimes and not many condemnations, as Alejandro Rodriguez said some time ago. So this is concerning for us. And also to wrap up, I want to show you this case that happened in this national strike that we had in Cali. We had a young student that had two shots in her leg, and we have these element that shows that she has a bullet lodged in her leg that hasn't been able to be taken out, and that's her evidence. And also these bullet shells that she was able to recover, that was not only a single type of weapon, but different types of weapons, even in long range. And after 20 days, more than 20 days, she hasn't been able to make a denounce in the general attorney's office, either because their page is not working or because they don't answer the phone. So the evidence, she has it in her body, and it's very complicated to these cases to have justice. And just to wrap up, I would like to say that people are still on the street. They are resisting these police violence, and they are demanding justice. And maybe until that happens, maybe we can do that. Maybe we can have a police reform. People are going to continue being on the street resisting these events. Thank you so much. Thank you, Natalia. Very interesting your presentation. I think that for those that don't know the topic, this geography of violence that Natalia was mentioning was a very highly recommended. We can share that with you if you want later on. For the ones that are just being part with us, we kick off this event since 9 o'clock in the morning, Colombia time. We started with some testimonials where we had different work, like for example, David was talking from Siloe, from the neighborhood, from Museum of Neighborhood, and I would like to link with our next guest, with sorry, Diego from Diario El País. And as we said, we have already read some of the chronicles that he has done on what is happening in Cali and around the country. So Juan Diego, I guess that we saw you for a minute and now we're there. Sorry, can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you. You cannot see me. No, we can hear you, but we cannot see you. Now, oh, a lot better. Thank you. Greetings. Really nice to see you. So, if you have heard, we are trying to keep 15 minutes in our first intervention, and then we're going to have a Q&A session. Good. I'm going to put timer so that I don't go back. We had David before on the talk. This morning we had a panel of testimonials where we were listening to David, and I wanted to bridge this because the first time that I read your chronicles, we were talking about the exchange that you had in Siloe with David. Yeah, it's very interesting. Maybe the person that knows the most about Siloe is a guy that has been living all his life there and has been an outstanding example of what has happened in Colombia. Through him, it was a link with the young people that we had in the protest. And this part of you talking that I'm showing that it was called Colombia is exploding. It was a summary of the 2 weeks that we had. I'm going to start with this that was called Colombia. I arrived to Colombia 5 weeks ago to the journalism area of the newspaper. The first month they said that I had to take it easy. If there is a transition like this, you take some time to read, to know people, to know the country, to go around Bogota and other places. We couldn't do that because we had the tsunami of information, juggernaut of information that has had us thinking about the country and with the great expectations from Spain and from Europe and the world, as we have said before. These all started, as you know, on the 28th, and our coverage was a coverage of a strike. And the prior day, we had a chronicle prior that we used to do before an important event. And there were a lot of factors, a lot of elements that make us think that this strike wasn't going to be as strong as it has been. The pandemic, the people has been fed up of it, of or marching. That was something that smothered the other protests that we had before. And our idea and talking with different analysts, and I'm going to share my screen as we can do that now. Can I share my screen, please? We had a first chronicle. Can you see that? Yes, yes, we can see it. where we said that an aggressive third wave of the COVID dampens the impact of the protests against the tributary reform of the president. If we see the perspective of these, we were totally wrong at that time, but that was what we had, the mood that we had, and there were a lot of politicians. And you remember the mayor of Bogota that wasn't censoring the strike, but wasn't inviting the people to go massively to the streets either. So this special coverage is interesting because we see how the facts are happening. Now, having a clear narrative, it becomes complicated because sometimes to make things simple, we say that it has been something that has gone from a minus to a plus. I mean, we had like an underground fire that had different foci, and they have maybe smothered in some places and they have reappeared in some others. And explaining this to a public that is coming from abroad, I mean, our intention in the country and talking about the El País, about the newspaper, is to tell our vision from inside to outside and to be able to understand these for the people, national people. It's a way to narrate that has some problems because we have to deepen more into these is something that some other media don't do, and how do we have a two-way street to tell this. This strike in the first days, I'm going to change the next one. This is the next chronicle that was on May the 1st, that was a Sunday, when we start gathering information from Cali, where the protest starts getting harder. And there is a growing concern on what is happening. The information is still confusing on what we have, but the president on Sunday, I guess at 9 o'clock, he makes an announcement that he is going to take the military forces to the street, always jointly working with the mayor's office and with the governors. But talking about a country where the military parts have had a lot of presence has created a growing concern that was something important for us. And I think that from these Sunday, when we started knowing the work that some people have done, and the images were pretty much evident on what we have on the military forces, this was the beginning of this coverage. Then we have had several days where 12 days later, after taking these, they take the military reform, the financial reform out, and we would believe that the tension was going to start smothering, that this was going to go to a certain plateau of the protest that could have some kind of results. But in this moment, the politicians don't have the control. We don't have a joint correlation between the facts on the street, and this is one of the most interesting things that we have seen on this social explosion. That it has a lot of heads, lots of sensitivities, and had many perspectives, a lot of reivindications that have to be considered, and all of these are the time of looking for a solution seen from the perspective of the government to try somehow to come back to normalcy makes things a lot more complicated. It was May the 4th. On the 3rd, we had again another outbreak, and the two young students are killed. Something that was strong, that was one of the keys for the protests that started and became viral and alarmed all the community. It was the murder of this kid the kid that is hitting police in a bike, and then we see how he shoots him in the back. I guess that's Kevin Gallo. I'm saying that by heart. I don't know exactly the name. But here is where we go to Cali, and that's where we had David. Where we arrived to Cali, it was pretty different to what the protest that we had in Bogota. By far, first in Cali, the police had lost the control of the city. That is what gave way to rioting and pillage and the burn of buses, and it's something that happens parallel with the peaceful protest, and something that hadn't happened that much in Bogota. That is, these guys that were on the neighborhoods where they had killings by the police. For example, in Puerto Resistencia, that was Puerto Rellena, but now it's called Port Resistance. That I guess it's never going to be Puerto Rellena ever again. It's a neighborhood, a poor neighborhood from Cali, heavily stigmatized, with a lot of young people without employment that 5 6 years ago were heavily divided by different groups, and that is something that has been moving little by little, and something that we found in Puerto Resistencia was like the soul of the protest. We had young people that felt mistreated by the society as a whole, by the government specifically, people with a lot of rage, people without a job and without employment, without a future, nothing clear, that on their shoulders they were feeling the social classism, the lack of opportunities, the lack of finding a quality job. And by seeing that on top of these, they were killing some people of the neighborhood in a protest that in the end had become violent, they decided to get in this neighborhood where something really interesting happened. One of the things that have interested me the most in these days has been this type of internal city with their own rules, where there are debates on the future of the country, where there is other different types of sensitivity, different people that can take the mic and talk about anything to everybody. That reminded me of 15M from Spain. Of course, saving certain differences that we had, but there was a feeling of people being fed up with the situation, and that this is a different point, and that's something that we found in Puerto Resistencia with this aggregate of young people that directly were willing to give their lives, and that's how I started Chronicle, talking with a guy that has braces, etc., and he's willing to do anything. He's willing to die if it comes the case. It's something that has happened in the revolutions, but we thought that it was already, we were beyond that. But that reflects the feeling that they had of being fed up with the situation. Afterwards, we did a larger report on the visit of Siloe, and that's where we have David, that is a key element that knows all the codes of this neighborhood of Siloe, something really popular in Colombia. I don't have to talk too much about that. But he says something that is literal in this article that caught my attention. Is like the guys are willing to die. He had the feeling that the kids were going with we were fighting against the police, and the horrorism got to such a level that they were not afraid to die, and they wanted to be in the first line. That was a discourse that impacted him a lot, that they cannot be stopped, and that the kids weren't afraid of this. This sums up somehow the feeling of this protest, that it clashes with something that we are living in these neighborhoods and what we have lived with the people, the mutual distrust of authorities, and even in the same social belonging. As quite often they come from the same place, but there is a general distrust among them. They are going in two ways. It's a really difficult situation between the young people and the police. And I think that is something that it should be one of the main revendications of everybody when we are talking about finishing with this strike. And is that this relation that is coming in terms of death, in terms of violation of human rights and others, they have to change entirely and they have to be considered from a different perspective. Well, we are going to say that it's going to be something that's going to happen, but is rather difficult. So in this report, we try to tell important things to explain to people from outside how we reached this place, and it was very difficult because some of the analysts were not able to trace a thread from the beginning to the end. But we were talking about the social explosion, the most important in the last 70 years. What were the causes of these? And all of these is something that was being debated in this panel and something that we were trying to give our response. It was rather complex and makes it in narrative terms something rather interesting. It comes in a time where all the analyses are worthy. So we come to a moment where we can see from different perspectives these strike or these attention that a sole analysis would not be enough. It has to be focused or based on different elements to be able to understand it better. What we can see is that Colombia is not going to be the same country afterwards. Maybe this is going to end up in a disillusion that change the politics, change the way of power, the counterbalances, but 10 years later on has been smothered. I don't know. The fire of this spark, how long is it going to last? But indeed, there are going to be changes, and from now on, we have to consider about a different country. Thank you very much, Juan Diego. Yeah, I totally understand. It's different. But thank you so much for this international call. I think that one of the things that we have discussed a lot for the people that are in the country and in cities like this, we have seen this difference between the national elements and the others that we have in the media that are seeing us. So on the same line, we are seeing Luis Munoz, that is coming from France 24, France 24. And I would just say I have 15 minutes. And for the ones that are making questions in the chat, we have tried to, with the production team, to filter out and to organize them. I guess that we aren't going to be able to answer all of them. Some of them are coming from a different place. But if someone is commenting on Facebook, we will try to gather them and to talk with them. So, Julius, the floor is yours, and thank you so much for being there.
Thank you very much for being here and listening to my coworkers. This makes it a little difficult to add things because all the interventions have been really complete, but let me introduce myself. I'm Luis Munoz. I'm part of France 24. France 24 is the international French channel that is channel English, French, Spanish, Arabic, and we have that French channel in Spanish in Bogota is 50, 60 people working here, and we've been here for 4 years, out of which I've been here 2 years. So, following a little bit the line of Juan Diego, I want to talk a little about the coverage in Cali. I went with my cameraman Juan Carlos Zapata, and we've been for 2 weeks working there. We were covered the first day, 20th of April, as Juan Diego said. It was like a little the expectation, see what's happened. Um, for the demonstrators that have, of course, been opposite to us. We had the 1st of May, which is uh, the national, or the international day of work. Things in Cali started getting worse and worse, with the videos, etc. Um, um, they sent us to Cali. We got to Cali to 8 in the 8 p.m. and until 4 in the morning we could enter the city because the city was in such riots that no one could enter the city in no way possible. So me and the cameraman were sleeping in the ground in the airport. It was really, really bad. We had to go back to Bogota in a completely empty plane. It was 10 people in the airplane. It was like a dystopic thing. Where are we going? And we got these testimonies of the taxi drivers. And 4 in the morning, sleeping, listening to our taxi driver saying, Cali, Cali, Cali. And just because of the intuition and the things that were going on, well, we took a cab, 5 people. There was a cat that was also in the cab. And we entered to a desertic city. It was like a battlefield, stones, blockades. To me, was really shocking to see this. We were not expecting that, and more coming from Bogota. Once we're in the cab, the okay, people have talked too much about um, we all the only toll that we saw because people were talking a lot of um, uh, a lot about things that were happening, looting all over the place, etc. And it's something that we've been seeing over the last few weeks. During the day, it was really difficult to see the police. You didn't almost see police. And there were blockades all over the city in the daytime, but you get those reports of common crimes that were happening, the looting, the causes of the vandals, and the protests, etc. A very different response, a pacific response from the blockades of the first line to the common crimes as inequality, structural violence that you suffer in Cali, and they could represent very well from what we've seen Cali to Colombia. I wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to share my screen with you guys. If you will indulge me, can you see it? Yes, yes. So I'm going to play the videos and the recordings with no volume, just to have a little bit of the images. This is day one, the day we got to Cali. This is Sunday, May 2nd, and the first thing that we found were scenes that my coworker and my cameraman, and that has traveled all around Latin America. He said that this reminded him a lot of Venezuela, the lack of food, those shortages of food, etc., and all these things that were happening. And we were talking here to the employee of the gas station. It was like a criminalization of strikes. No, we found the opposite. If people had to be 3 hours in the line, well, people would do it because the strikes had a good cause. For example, this man was saying that he was waiting to get in the bank. He was there for 2 hours. And then they talk about Venezuela, but this city, and you see here that in Cali, things are the same. People were reporting who was behind the infiltrators, then all the oil and fuel could not run out so easily in 2 days. Things people talk about in these moments of tension, but it's really hard to get the real information of what's going on. After this shortage, well, we talked about the Minga, Indígena Minga, which is the indigenous force of Colombia. And the first day they were there, they were getting there, the indigenous community, and the role was really it was really protagonic. It was it was it was a very very important and leading role that they played during these strikes. Um, of course, they were shot at. This is a public audience that we had. They had captured an infiltrated, an undercover policeman that was trying to delegitimize the strikes, talk to the United Nations. So it's this what happened here because it represents how this Minga became the authority due to the lack of public force at the daytime. Let me, like you wouldn't see a cop during the day, but at night they all came out and started killing people. So that's really, 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 really shocking and really interesting to see. The role of the Minga was to do that until Sunday 9th comes, which is when they go back to the University of the Valley and they say blockade in the richest neighborhoods in the country. This is another blockade, and they start firing shots at the people. This is a really important point of what the battle or the of what the strikes were in Colombia. How these people started shooting people in a paramilitary way, basically because they were civilians, and the authorities too. In this case of the government, Duque stops visiting Cali. They start talking about dialogues between the protesters and the demonstrators and the mayor's office. This violent acts, what you see in the videos that have been all over, people with the white shirts that are with an image that is difficult to forget in this country, Colombia, and for everyone who's here. Here to talk a little bit about lot. We'll go to Siloé, where they stopped killing people. This was the day after the murders on the 3rd of May, in which 3 or 4 kids of the neighborhood died. And it's curious how this represents journalism of the importance of being on the ground, because we got to Siloé to cover the information. We're combining coverage for beneficiaries and reporting, etc. So we got there, and a kid of the Sujana Association Human Rights, he told me, "Hey, we're doing a Pacific candle demonstration. Yeah. If a social leader in can come to be here with us, that's when David shows up. David that talked before, and that's David. We can see him with the bullet from the previous day, and what we saw was a lot of anger, contained anger, accumulated anger from the people of the neighborhood. They were in a Pacific candle demonstration, and the police started shooting them. They just came there and they started shooting them, and threatening the lives of people that were not even in the primera línea, the first line. Uh, we have Francia Marquez, who's a candidate to the presidency of Colombia. And it's been great to see the difference on how this demonstration has been that we've seen in Bogota. There have been, of course, there have been police brutality in Bogota, but the anger that was in Cali, the revolutionary aspect that we have there of the people and are facing that public force because people needed a structure change. Well, to me, was really shocking. On Monday, actually, we're going to present a report in France 24, 4 days of filming in Siloé, where we're going to talk about the victims with the soccer team that's starting in 2009. 30 young people have been murdered either by the police or by gangs or whatever. And it shows really well the violence that these neighborhoods can live through and the structural difficulties that they face every single day and the abandonment. These kids were telling us that you only can go out or with soccer. You can get out of the neighborhood playing soccer or just with the help of God, right? The importance and the multiple religions that are there and the role that they develop. And the report is the first line where the Portada al Mar, which is a neighborhood where you see those barriers that they have in Colombian cities between the social classes. Or maybe you go from level 6 to level 1 and they live close to one another. These kids were blocking the zone, and almost in the same of Juan Diego was mentioning of these people, Puerto Resistencia, to me was really shocking. There were kids that were participating in the demonstrations to be able to eat because they were organizing community lunches and they came to here just to eat. they became more political just as they were there. People that were poor, they, it became more politics and through a connection with the university people of Universidad del Valle and how they created a letter of petitions on the university in the mountain, etc. But to me, it was really shocking what we Juan Diego saw. This availability that kids had, they were willing to die. They didn't care. They felt like soldiers. The first line is the resistance line, capable of facing anyone. And there was a heroic point of adrenaline, but a point of commitment and despair. Because when you are not afraid to die, it's because you have nothing to lose. And to me, that's really, really, really shocking. I'm from Barcelona. There have been many demonstrations from very different reasons, but never, no one was available. No was willing today. They were in Catalonia. They were proud. There was not a one piece of paper in the ground, but you see the contrast here. And to finish, I wanted to show. We had an interview with the mayor, Jorge Espina from Cali, and talk with him a little bit about this subject and the lack of public of police in the streets today and the institutional lacking. Someone said that the mayor stopped having power, basically, which is surprising about this last 2 weeks. And the general of the army just took control of everything, and the mayor called for strikes that no one went to. He changed his shirt. Also, the video that became viral talking to the ambassadors. Such despair that also shows the difficulty to understand everything. If the mayor can call the shots in the city, there's an army general controlling everything. If you don't see police, if you don't see the army, would you see blockades? It's like each blockade was different than the other. Well, for me, it's really difficult to understand. But at the same time, it was a politicization process in which there were a lot of stakeholders like the Minga or like the African Colombian communities and the indigenous community, where we saw the desperate scream from neighborhoods such as Siloe, those young people that that is more, 20% of unemployment with the pandemic, the neighborhoods of the greatest concentration in Cali. And that politicization is interesting. And as Juan Diego mentioned, and this changed Colombia forever. We don't know the result, but we know that things are actually going to change. We don't know how, but things are going to change. So with that, I will finish my talk. Thank you, Jose. Luis, now I'm going to open the session so we can talk about the Q&A session and the questions that we got from the chat. I've tried to organize them in some by blocks. So in case we're going to direct question for Vicenta, there's a question for you. But I would like to connect with what Luis just mentioned with his closing. I think you have introduced something that was a little absent in the tales that we have been saying, and Vicente started talking about racism, structured racism, you complement it with a structured violence. And I think that connects us with the perspective of what you were mentioning. And thank you for talking about what happened with the Minga and with the CRIC that's on the here in Cali, that put in evidence what we all know for a long time, that deep racism in society. And that in that and today, which is the Afro Colombianidad Day or the African Colombian Heritage Day, well, calls us to some questions. So, Vicenta, first question is from Angelica Zamora, and she asks us, what elements do you think should be brought to a political reform from African Colombian communities? And I'm going to join that with another question. This question involves Alejandra and Natalia, taking into account the work that you have done regarding the crimes committed by the police. What will be the central points that we have to share with the police reform? these populations that have suffered exclusions and discrimination to violence that transcends much more. That it's not just being afraid of death to a virus, it is a constant afraid of fear of death. So this question towards the reforms that had to do with the police. So Vicenta, floor is yours. Thank you. Well, I would start by saying that one of the things that are important for us, for the African Colombian population, Black people, has to do with the deactivation of the police. Um, the police should always looks at us as criminals. Um, and it's not only a reform, but it's only about the education, who are the criminals and who are the people that have to be protected. And you would see that in the protest. They have one of the generals said, we are here to take care of people to defend life. And however, they shoot us. And during all the time, the police has been caused of sexual violence against our women in our territory and violence against um, these impoverished um, territories and communities. They just treat us as criminals. There are no other options. So it's one of the first things that it's important for the population to take into account. And also, we will have the proposal of our having our own courts that are in charge to of doing the follow-up of the situations that happen in our communities, to have our own courts and tribunals, and to have a perspective, a cross-sectional perspective, taking into account all the historical violence that we've suffered. And another thing that I think it's really important has to do with education. For our population, it's vital, it's paramount to have real possibilities of educating yourself, to go to university. And I mean real because it's not only for them to open free slots, but for them to give us the possibility in terms of food, in terms of materials, transportation. Our population has been a population that has been impoverished. That if we, oh, they only open slots in the university, it's not enough because they have to work to get their food. It's not going to have the possibility of finishing your career, their career. And to that end, I think it's important for us to have a percentage in the universities of Black people in accordance to the population. Just in, it's not for a negotiated average. In Cali, we know that Black population is 20% of the population of the city. So let's have that proportionality there. And in terms of healthcare, also to be able to acknowledge um, the training to keep receiving that ancestral medicine. And in financial terms, for us to have the possibilities of um, to create our own economies, and for us to have the possibility to have our own economy that can allow us to get a dignified livelihood. That's what I would say, just part of the. I know this is a huge work that you have to do. I don't know if you want me, Natalia, to answer the question that I mentioned at the beginning, or do you know which one it is? All right, so maybe any of you guys want to chip in? Go, you start. Okay. Well, in Bolillo, Dios y Patria, we propose 7 points that we believe are important for police reform, starting from institutional changes that need to happen for the police to stop being part of the Ministry of Defense, it become part of the Ministry of Interior, and also for the police to crimes committed by them stop being judged by military justice and be judged by ordinary justice. But we believe that these type of things are not enough. In Chile, for example, the police went to become from the Ministry of Defense to the Ministry of Interior. All right, so this policeman became part of the Ministry of Interior. So we believe um, of this police, there has to be integral change and change that DOC pattern, the God and country level. This because they try to, it's like the police is inherits war to look for an enemy because of the war we lived before. But we need to change that, guys. All right, and keep working to be able to profile and brand those citizens that are keeping hunted in public service. So we believe that we have to start from institutional changes, but also that has to do with a huge dialogue from a broad discussion in which we have a lot of participation of all the citizens that are stigmatized and pursued by the police. So they need to come from some proposals that we have to do from Bogota and political sectors, but it needs to come also from a broad discussion because the police is this body in charge of keeping the order in the public space. And the public space is that place where citizens inhabit and end up being uh, almost the main representative or representationality on the streets. So that's why I believe because we have a need of reestablishing the relationship between the citizens and the police. It needs to come with a huge dialogue and a huge dialogue in which we change that chauvinistic nature of police and that racist nature of police to change all these narratives of looking for internal enemy, aiming to profile people as these people that are not part of the main um, piece of of the society, and that's not good, you know. So we want to change that. We actually want to do and change that. I would like to add nothing more because I think that Temblores is really clear on how this reform should happen, but especially is to understand that this logic of the internal enemy that the police is always looking for comes with the idea that they're rotten apples. But when you see the evidence and the amount of facts of police brutality, you see that they need structure changes. And as Alejandro is mentioning, uh, uh, these changes need to be agreed upon. The population that has suffered this amount of violence. So maybe I will stay a little bit with you guys, Luis and Juan Diego. Don't worry, we will answer your question, Daniela Ramirez. Every time that you, from your perspectives, from your own perspectives, I read it wrong. Now there are so many tools of dissemination you can depend in which events happen. Each one can based from the perspective. This is why our social media are flooded with a narrative war. How do you guys find an objective point from which you can analyze the situation, Carlos? As to the question, how can Tambores verify the reports against public force in the country? If they do it electronically, how do you guys do it? Also, we can talk about the work that Natalia was telling us on 070, verifying that. So, what do you think, guys? Should I start? Yes, go ahead. Well, yes, I agree. There's a huge amount of information and there's a lot of misinformation. You see it, but not necessarily is understood where things happen. So this is why I was talking about how frustrating it is because you get frustrated with verifying the information to understand what happened and from which citizens are recording these events. But basically, um, to geolocate these videos with a lot of forensic analysis of the images, trying to understand if they correspond to the places where they say they things haven't happened, although all in this track something has happened, which is really interesting, is that understanding the amount of information flow that is circulating on this on social media, there has been a movement so for citizens and their tales say where things happened, what date, what place, what time, and that helps facilitates a lot the verification of the facts for which we're analyzing that didn't happen before in other protests. We have never seen that before. So citizens have learned how to report these events mm, and from different perspectives, and not only taking a look at the videos. Sometimes it's not clear what moment it corresponds. In one of the demonstrations that we're analyzing, um, in the moments that police are allies of the protest, they started making us excited because the demonstrators showed us, hey, you are our people too. We are fighting for your rights too. But then we found out that what happened is that ISMAT have run out of ammo, and that's why they stopped shooting. So it's necessary to report on the ground. It's necessary to talk with witnesses of the facts that are happening. And what's because these things were recorded and to understand what happened. And well, as I mentioned, this process is slow. Yes, of course. On our end front temblores, the Grita platform, as I mentioned, the T means triangulate. Grita, or the T as Grita is triangulate. Is triangulate that information, right? So we first receive the reports through different channels. That also allows us to be able to see one event from um, different from different perspective. For example, if we get a video from one end and then another from the another, from the person that suffered this violence or the family member. Mm, and on the other hand, we do the contact with institutions such as the offenders, the weak, the People's Office or the People's Advocacy Office. But we are trying to have that multiple outlook of as one event to get closer to have a objective vision of the things that happen. But this ombudsman's office has been so weak. I haven't protected anyone. They have shined because of their absence during these events. And well, it's almost impossible because obviously all this social reality that we live through goes through an outlook that we have, and that comes from the perspective and taking yourself on record a live event. So that's where things are changing. I don't mean that regulations are wrong. What I mean is that we need to assume this from the very social complexity that we live through in the moment. If we are born in a context that that term gives us the outlook that we're going to have.
So to complete in terms of the verification, we also have been working for a long time consolidating databases for different video, even from 2013. So in several locations we have videos, and in all these centralizations we have, they go through a verification process where we triangulate this information and we start seeing our databases to see if they are part of a prior events. So I'm going to see the agricultural strike that we had in 2013, or what happened in the Buenaventura strike on 2017, And that the same has happened with all our team to try to do this verification and trying to complete this work that we do on the terrain, that we consider that is essential. But we also believe that from this systematic exercise that we are doing, we can complement these doing different types of records and systemation. So we have around 10 minutes, give or take. So I'm going to try to take some of the pending questions that we have. This one go for juries and Juan Diego. We have Rosa Cristina Parra Lozano. Do you believe that the safety conditions allow the international press to continue seeing what is happening in the streets and communities and the national media are not showing? And I will add one thing to Maria Paula Giraldo that goes in the same trend. What is the perspective on the international journalists or the private media that we have in our country? Are they informing, disinforming? Are they giving context? Are they biased in the information that is provided? Have you checked the information of the strike according to your judgment? What do you believe? That's a tough question. The safety conditions allow to make a proper review of the strike, even though in Cali we found that violence on the street and made things a tad more dangerous. That's my perspective due to the scenes that I saw and the experiences that we've had. It was a tad more dangerous, but indeed we can do a proper and intense follow-up of everything that is happening because we also count, as we said before, with a lot of citizens that are recording the scenes that happened. It was very difficult to hide what is really happening around, and we have a lot of NGOs, a lot of organizations that are doing our verification process that is very important that help us to determine that one video was recorded on a specific day in a specific place, and that gives credibility. It is not only a WhatsApp video. I haven't been that long in the country, and I wouldn't like to make any criticism to the local media. But for example, I'm ever since I arrived, I have been reading El Espectador and El Tiempo, and I think that they are talking about the strike. We can criticize them as we can do with any other media, but I don't feel that they are hiding anything. And on top of these, there is an important media plurality, not only in the large ones, but we have websites like Silla Vacía or Voragine that are showing reports, points of view. And I think the Colombian that wants to be informed can do so through the international media and also through the national media because there is a plurality in the voices that we have heard. Sorry, Enrique, go ahead. I just wanted to thank Juan Diego. Thank you. Now, linking with the information that we had from Juan Diego, the situation in Cali has evolved. Beginning with my cameraman, even manifestation, we had a small encounter with some of them, and that came to some skepticism against all the press, on the national and international press. We're accustomed in Bogota that in new March you are recording everything and no problems. But in Cali, I guess due to the violence that we have in the streets, everything was a lot more tense. So we had to start evolving on the march as the people who were doing. People were looking at us with distrust in a way that we had to cover with a lot of respect and ask, can we record? Is it okay with you? Because the guys were really frightened that the images could create problems for them due to political repression. We're talking about that, and they were really distrustful of the images and the cameras, and that evolved. In the end, they were looking for us after a report, after creating some report, and I think it's important for the journalism, for national international, to be there. If you are there, it's great. You can see what is happening and you create confidence with the rioters. And as you have seen that is happening, for example, the report that we did with the first line guys, it happened. Also, we were looking for the sources, and that was an evolution. In the end, many of them, many of the rioters were thanking, and I don't know if they were exaggerating, but thanks to our reports, and we have, these had extended to international organizations, and they had made a call that had avoided some killings. And I don't know if it's true, if it's exaggerated, but as a journalist, you feel that that is our duty to avoid having more deaths. And I agree with Juan Diego on 070, and I think that you can also find some really good sources inside the Colombian media. But if you see the international ones, it is good also, and that's even greater. I'm not talking about 070. I didn't want to appear biased on what I was mentioning. So thank you so much to everybody. Maybe if someone wants to wrap up with some comments or some things that you would like to say, because this situation, of course, creates this lack of ability to talk. We have a lot of questions to know what is happening next. What are we doing? How can we move forward and work with those voices in those panels like this? And my answer is like, stay with us. And this afternoon, we're going to continue talking, and we will try to reach these discussions. And many more events like this and many more voices have to be gathered. If someone wants to say some final words for this panel in these last 2 minutes. I'm going to make a short comment, and is what something that I had before is like many neighbors were talking about the young people as a new generation after several generations that were silent, and how they lost the fear of protesting, and they were talking about the crystal generation that is actually a steel generation. I love the popular support to the young people, how they were really proud of the front line, how they were protesting, and it was curious. That is something that is not commonly seen due to the lack of supplies or others, and the protest ends up being criminalized. And I think that these are huge popular mass that were working with this crystal generation, as they called it. Vicenta, what she wanted to say something. Vicenta, please wrap up. Well, I would say that we are living an important moment, something very strong indeed, but it's a great moment also to restructure the society that, or this government that hasn't been capable of linking the different voices, the different expressions, the different cultures. That would be all. Thank you so much, Vicente. And again, thank you so much to all of you and the people that are listening to us. We are going to go to lunch break, if I'm not wrong. Yes, that's right. We're going to go to a mandatory lunch break. We are going to hear the presentation with some videos that we have for you. But again, Alejandra, Natalia, Luis, Juan Diego, Vicenta, thank you. It is a pleasure to continue with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.